Morning. I want to talk a little bit about perspective and I guess like awareness. Not sure quite what you would call it, but the idea is that you have. It's not that you don't compare yourselves to other people, but that you limit, I guess. Limit the comparisons. Let's see if I can do this cleanly. So imagine you were to get, you are a male and you were to get married to a female, and your mother was an amazing cook and you loved that about her. And now your wife is, by comparison, not that great of a cook. You now have some level of envy or comparison or concern. You wish the other person, you wish your wife was different because she's not as good a cook as your mother was. And there are things that can be done about that. But the point is, you have a point of comparison. Now, imagine that you were not well tended to as a child and had a mother who made instant dinners all the time. Nothing home cooked. So now your new wife, when you come home from work, has made a meal for you. And it's on the scale of cooking, 10 out of 10 being Gordon Ramsay or some professional chef, she's like a 5 out of 10. Okay, you get home, you have the food, you go, this is amazing, this is a home cooked meal, and you made this yourself? That's also amazing. All of this is amazing. I'm amazed. So it doesn't really matter to homeboy, because to him, his wife is a 10 out of 10 chef. She is amazing. Now, imagine this is his second wife, and his first wife was a point of comparison for lots of other things. So his first wife is a 10 out of 10 chef, and then the second wife is a little bit better or a little bit worse. The point of comparison, the bar is now at, well, it's 5 out of 5 Gordon Ramsays, I guess, but it's 10 out of 10 first wives, though. This is, I'm not sure if I'm making this very clear. Imagine you are a female watching a movie, a Hallmark movie or something, and the movie is absolutely, and this is where we get into fiction, things get a little bit more interesting. You watch the movie, and the husband is always there and always supportive, and casts aside his work at any point to dote about his wife, and pretty much bends over Jim from The Office. And Jim's a simp. I can't. There's not a way around that. They actually wrote him as a simp. So, whatever. The point is, you get this fictional view of what a husband should be and do and say and encourage, even. And this fictional view is, the so-called perfect husband. However, perfect or perfection is from the female perspective. So if the woman ever says, "I sure wish my man would X," this guy in this movie does all those things and more. So you have now created in your mind, without having married anyone or even known too many men, you've created this thing in your head, this 10 out of 10 man here he is on this movie, this fictional story with fictional characters. Here's your 10 out of 10 man. And now every relationship gets compared against this fictional man. And oh, why can't he be this and do that? Yes, he said that this was a bad idea. Well, maybe it is a bad idea. You know, this is the same thing. It's especially knowing realizing that it comes from a certain perspective, and this is where fiction becomes a real problem, because fiction is presented in these new. This is actually forms of marketing, especially in the visual medium, television shows, television fiction, motion picture fiction, dynamic media fiction. All of this is written from a certain perspective and presented to a certain demographic. So, what's that other one? Was like the whole Gaston, Beauty and the Beast, manly man is the bad guy, and the quiet, unassuming prince is the good guy. And you have to remember that every bit of this story, no, not that technically that story, but all that story and the all the Hollywood fiction, or all the fiction in general, was written by, surprise, writers. So, and I've talked about this before, the media is a limiting factor. There are certain people who will write books, and if you only read books, you will only hear the perspective, you will only read from people that are that certain type. So if you only watch movies, you are only receiving views from people who are writers. And those writers are the guy, you know, it should be no surprise that when Hollywood writers write movies, the Hollywood writer type person gets the girl, and the jock that would have shoved him into a locker when he was in high school is the bad guy. So this is it's not life imitating art, but it's trying to be. It's art trying to make life imitate it. So it's creating a scenario of, you know, this is my perspective, this is my view that I want to not enforce onto the world, but to imagine. These imaginings, evil imaginings. I've taken the world and ignored it and created my own written world, and now that I have pushed this view into the eyes of as many people as possible, with as many other, you know, psychological methods as I can, life wants to imitate art. You know, a woman says, I want to meet my Jim from the office. Instead of asking why Jim didn't tell Pam, no, that's a bad idea. No, we don't need to do that. No, you don't really need to work. You don't need to be an artist. And yes, I am going to stay and complete my task at the, that sports thing idea that they had that would have made them millionaires, but instead you just walked away instead of hanging out for like a couple more months till the company gets sold and then be millionaires. But no, we're just, you know, every whim of Pam is being observed. So this is art trying to create life, and then hoping that life imitates it, which unfortunately it has in many cases. So we've created these false 10 out of 10s, and then we've begun to compare ourselves against those 10 out of 10s, and we've begun to compare reality against those 10 out of 10s, and this is where the 2D versus 3D girl argument thing takes place. It's a very strange thing. So I've talked about this from the cooking perspective, and from the female trying to get a man perspective. Well, now apply all you know about the internet to, and this perspective, this reality warping false perspective and apply that to men's expectations of women, and just weep. It's the worst part about the PORN industry is that they're happy to tell you. The people who are in charge are happy to tell you. You can look up people who originated all this stuff and perpetuated, and ask look up quotes from them, and they're very happy to tell you what it is trying to do and what it is trying to, how it is trying to impact you and society. And we all just kind of, I'm sorry, society is kind of an odd word. I'd say civilization or a nation, I'm not sure. But the point is, we've created this perspective, this new 10 out of 10. And against that fictional reality, fictional ideal, all things are being prepared. Reality comes up wanting, obviously, every time. And this, like I said, it's the 2D versus 3D. 2D girls are better than 3D girls. Yeah, if you close your eyes and imagine things, those things are probably exactly what you desire, exactly what you want, and nothing you don't. It's that old Jack Handy quote. Whenever I want to get away, I just close my eyes and imagine my perfect island where I'm lying on the beach, the temperature's perfect, the waves are perfect, the wind is just blowing through my hair, and everything there is perfect. Except for the flies. They're terrible. There's no... You can't create a false reality and then compare reality against it and be like, why can't you just be like your imaginary brother? But it's what we have done in so many avenues of life. So, when you find yourself trying to create comparisons, ask yourself first, is this something that is actually real? Is this something that actually exists? Or is this the imaginations of a screenwriter or a book writer, or I don't know what other kind of writer there would be. Any kind of, like, our art is always designed to elicit an emotion, to create a feeling, and usually, to some extent, to create thoughts in you, to make you see things from the artist's perspective, almost literally. And the subtleties of, if you look at someone who's like an illustrator, people like that have very, very subtle ways of drawing something that you would look at and say, well, this is photorealistic, this is precisely what it should be, and it's not. People don't realize it, that there's very minute artistic decisions that go into this. There's that documentary. It's a really terrible documentary. It's very informative, and it's just a terrible... he's a terrible person. It's terrible, but it is very informative about the art industry and, comics, illustrations, stuff like that. It's all designed with something in the back of your mind, usually overt or covert, that says, I'm trying to accomplish this. I'm trying to change this in you who are reading this. I'm trying to create in you this portion of my mind, to enforce a perspective, I should say. Which, again, almost literally is the case. So, I guess when you think of a thing or measure yourself against a thing, you need to ask yourself first, is this something that is true? Is this reality? And I don't know how you really determine that. I mean, you could look at... There are gradients of this, obviously. Things that are 100% fiction and fantastical. Although those can be mediums for slipping in ideas and getting you to feel certain ways. This is why we identify with these alien characters. Orcs and elves and aliens. They all have some perspective, some connection back to humanity, so that you as you are intaking the media, can still identify with them in some way and come to feel the way that you're supposed to feel about them. That's why you don't have, unfathomable horrors as alien enemies, and then at the end you're like, wow, those aliens, makes me think. Instead you're just like horrified screaming the entire time. But all media has this attached to it, just to varying degrees. A biography, and you can tell when people are being pretty dry. If you read defensively, you can tell when people are editorializing and adding little bits and pieces of their own, or adding perspectives that are not necessarily adding unfounded perspectives. It is certainly possible, and I have listened to a few books that were like this, where it's like, oh, he also believed X, and the reason he believed X is in an interview with this person, that person, they said he believed X. Like, okay, well, this person knew hundreds of people, and probably thousands more knew of him. You can kind of pick whoever you want, but whatever. Still be reading defensively. I guess you only just have to have an understanding about I'm going to say art and literature. Well, having a basic understanding of how art is accomplished, layout, framing, all that stuff, and then some literary understanding where you can choose, you can recognize when someone's choosing words intentionally, choosing specific words intentionally, soft words intentionally, or you can kind of realize what the author is trying to do to you, or what the author is trying to accomplish with what they're doing. It's pretty rare that someone would be subtle enough that you wouldn't actually pick up on it at all, but you do have to, like I said, read defensively. And then, open yourself up to other opinions about the book, about the piece of media. And I found that a lot. When I find something I really like, I can look at, reviews or read synopses by people who don't like it, and then get a different perspective on it, and kind of reevaluate and go, maybe this guy's right on a couple of these points, or maybe this guy's 100% right, and I just I missed it. I took the wrong message, hook, line, and sinker. Very helpful for getting another perspective on art or media that you like, because you can reevaluate it and see if it's trying to bend you toward something else.